What's up guys, ATCG here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we have a special deck, one of the most requested decks in our channel, and this is Lightsworn's that finally got the new version of their boss monster with Battles of Legends. We have the new version of Judgment Dragon. It's a very good monster, it's very easy to summon in the deck, it's basically a Judgment Dragon you can access whenever you want, and it gives the deck a whole new win condition. So I'm going to show you a build that can use this monster very efficiently, because it has a couple of things you need to keep in mind if you want to make it consistent in your deck. It's not something you can put in any Lightsworn version. I think it would not work that well in a Chaos version. So if you want to play a Chaos version, this monster is not for you. If you want to play a pure version of Lightsworn, then this card is definitely something you want to keep out for, so you can win more games consistently. So before we begin, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you want to see more videos, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new content. And now, let's get to the deck profile. So first off, we have the all-star monster, Judgment Dragon. If you play a pure version, then you need to play Judgment Dragon because he is the one that will win you most of your games. Pretty simple. If you have 4 more different Lightsworn monsters in your grave, you drop it. It's a board wipe. You can use this as long as you have life points to pay. And the new monster is very similar, so it gives you a Judgment Dragon that you can access whenever you want, because you have to hard draw this card, but since the new monster is a synchro monster, you can summon it whenever you have access to it and you don't need to see it every single game. So yep, and now we need to play a lot of tuners in the deck to make the deck work, because the new monster requires you to have 4 different tuners in your graveyard in order to use the board wipe effect. So I am maxing out on all the good tuner Lightsworns. So first off, we have the 3 Raiden. Of course, Raiden is the one that mills during the end phase. You can mill 2 during your turn 2, so he mills 4 in total, and he's a level 4 tuner, which is very important to go into your monster because it's a level 8 synchro. 3 Felice, same reason, you mill her, you special summon from the field. She also has an effect that you can tribute her to destroy one monster your opponent controls and then mill 3 more cards, which can actually be really useful in some scenarios. I'm maxing out on Minerva, Lightsworn Maiden. This is not something I would usually play at 3, but I feel like it's necessary now because you need to have more tuners in the grave. It's not the best card to draw, but she is a level 3 tuner, so she can combo with some of the Perform Mages to go for level 7 synchros. If you mill her, she gives you 1 extra mill, which is not that bad. But again, it's something that I think you have to run in the deck because she's a Lightsworn. You can use it for cards like Solar Recharge, so even if you draw her, you can get her to the grave very easily. So you can use the effect of your new Judgment Dragon very easily. And now for the non-tuner Lightsworns, play of course 3 Lumina. Lumina is the one that gives you all your monsters back. She's another way to dump your dead Felice in your hand or your Minerva if you happen to draw a lot of them, so you can get them back and have more monsters on the field. 3 Wolf, of course, the Wolf, the Yuhade 3. If you get lucky with this deck, you can get a lot of advantage. And this is one thing about Lightsworn that I think makes it very interesting compared to other decks and makes a lot of players want to try it out, because it has this aspect that there's not something that it's set up that you're going to get every single game. You're going to mill good some games and you're going to get a huge board. You're going to mill bad and you're not going to be able to do anything. But it's this gamble aspect of the deck that I think makes it very, very intriguing to play. And the last Lightsworn is 2 Lila, because you can search her whenever you want. She is important to pop some back row. Maybe if your opponent is playing Alter Guy, Subterrors, and they have a lot of back row. Or if your opponent has a certain flat gate that you need to get rid of no matter what, you can get your Luminas, you get her in defense mode and pop any back row, and she mills during the end phase. Your Raiden does 2, your Lumina does 2. So with Lila, you can get a lot of monsters that you can send to the grave during the end phase to have a lot of tuners in the grave to make sure you can use the effect of your new Judgment Dragon. And now for the generic monsters, play Perform Mage Engine. I cut down one of them. I'm still playing, of course, 3 Damage Juggler because it's the best one to mill. I was playing 3 Hat Tricker, but now I'm playing only 2 because I try to make space for more tuners in the deck just to make sure that I have enough resources to go into my Judgment Dragon completely free. So I think Hat Tricker is good at 2. And I'm playing 1 Trick Clown because it's the one that you can use consistently, because you can just put it under an Xyz monster. So even if you used its effect this turn, you can just keep it under as Xyz material and then detach it during your next turn and you'll get it back. So it's very easy to consistently bring this guy out. And he's actually the most important one if you're trying to summon your new Judgment Dragon, because the Dragon of Heaven requires 2 monsters that have to be the same attribute. So you need lights because all your tuners that are level 4 are lights because they're Lightsworn. So Trick Clown and Damage Juggler will do for the synchro summon. Hat Tricker will not because it's a nerf. So you need to keep that in mind when you're trying to synchro summon this monster. But still, it's very, very easy to get to your Perform Mages because you mill so much in the deck, so you will eventually mill either a Damage Juggler or Trick Clown himself to get him back on the field. For more tuners, play 3 Adhara because it's a monster that can get you to Nut Beast. If you use this along with your Hat Tricker, they're both Earth, so you can summon Naturia Beast. If you know that your opponent's playing something that they cannot deal with Naturia Beast, maybe like a Pendulum deck, then you will insta-win that game. But it's also really good to summon it on top of everything else, because you start with it and you're going to Needle Fiber, and any hand leads to Needle Fiber, which will get you another tuner from your deck. So I think it's a really good card. And the one Jet Synchron, because it's the monster you usually bring out from your deck with your Needle Fiber, because even if you link climb with it, you can still have a monster in the grave you can use, and you can discard cards like Wolf, like Lila, or anything you don't need in your hand, specific scenarios. It's another way to get tuners to the grave when you have a lot of Minervas in your hand, or Felice. Now let's go to the spells. Play, of course, 3 Charge of the Light Brigade. Of course, if you have to play Lightsworn, you need to max out on this. You just mill 3, you search anyone you want. But again, you have to get lucky sometimes with this deck in order to do some optimal plays. It's not something that relies a lot on its mills, but you cannot mill terribly and win. You have to mill decent. But still, it's not something that can't happen. It's very, very common because you play a lot of good cards to mill in this deck. 3 Solar Recharge, this is a way to get rid of your extra copies of Minerva, so that's why I don't think it's too bad maxing on it, because you can just discard it for recharge, draw 2 new cards, and mill 2 more. So the more Lightsworns you play in the deck, the more live Solar Recharge will be, and since you play 17 Lightsworn monsters in this specific build, I hardly can see Solar Recharge being dead in any particular moment. Actually, you technically play 20, because Charge of the Light Brigade will search you a monster to discard for Solar Recharge, so it's a really good. And the one-offs, play 1 for 1, mainly for Jet Synchron, but you can get Adhara with it if you want to go for Naturia Beast if the matchup requires it. 1 Foolish Burial, you can send your Wolf to help level 4 monster, you can send your Performage to get new on field, you can send your Jet Synchron if you need a tuner, very versatile. Monster Reborn to keep having more extenders, because sometimes when you're going second, if you're playing into a full board, it's very weird for your opponent to know exactly what to negate, but even if they negate the first thing, then sometimes this could be enough. So if they have something that can negate and destroy a monster effect, if you use Lumina's effect and she goes to the grave, then sometimes this is enough to end your turn, so this card actually makes it a little bit easier. If you cannot mill something good, then you can get a play back from the grave. And 1 Instant Fusion, which gives this 3 purposes. 1, it's good going second with Restrict. Second, it's good with Mad Dragon, because you can go into your Synchro, which of course Mad Dragon can change his own attribute, so you can match the attribute of your Lightsworns, which is light, to go into your Dragon of Heaven. And you can summon Theseus, which is also another tuner that you can have in the grave to make sure your Dragon of Heaven can use its effect very consistently no matter what you open. So I think even if it's at 1, it's playing a lot of targets is not that bad, because it's not a tight extra deck. It's not a super combo heavy deck like a Chaos Lightsworn deck. It doesn't have a specific play that you want to go every single time. You just adapt depending on what you draw and depending on what you mill. So I think this version is not as consistent as would be as something like that, but I think it's a lot more fun, and I think this is what people are most interested in. So now let's go to the extra deck. We have the new boss monster right next to Judgment Dragon. We have Judgment, the Dragon of Heaven. Really good monster. It requires the same attributes for all materials, so you need to make sure that you don't try to use something like a Hat Trigger for that. But like I said, Mad Dragon can change his attributes, so if you draw Instant Fusion, you can get the non-tuner to become a light very easily. And if you have 4 more tuners with different names in your grave, you can pay half your life and destroy all other cards on the field, and for the rest of this turn, you can only special summon dragons. So it's really good, because if you summon this first, you can blow up the field, and then you can drop your Judgment Dragons and try to go for a game. Also, during your end phase, you have to banish 4 cards on top of your deck. It's a shame that it doesn't mill, but I can see, because it would have a lot of mills, but still, it's a really good card. Unlike Judgment Dragon, you don't have to hard draw this in order to use it. You can get access to it whenever you have the appropriate materials. This appropriate build is very easy to get 4 tuners in the grave with different names to use its effect, so you can have a consistent Judgment Dragon that you can get on the field whenever you want. And the rest of the monsters are pretty much basic. We have 1 Michael, the Arch Lightsworn. You can just pay 1,000, target any card on the field to banish it, and if it's destroyed, recycles back all your Lightsworns, and you get life points. 1 Naturia Beast, because you play Adhara, and combine this with Hat Trigger. If your opponent plays something that runs a lot of spells, you can just summon Naturia Beast and win the game instantly. And it also mills you cards, which is really good in this deck particularly. When people summon Naturia Beast, they don't pay attention to the mill effect, but in this particular deck, if your opponent aimlessly starts using spell cards and he gives you more mills, then you're going to get more advantage. 1 Dragster, because mainly you play Minerva, it's very easy to use her if you have normal summon. If you don't have something like Lumina that you need to normal summon, then you can just summon her and Hat Trigger to go for Dragster, so it's very easy to summon a level 7 Synchro. 1 Draco Berserker, you can replace this for Savage if you want, but you don't get links in the grave so consistently because you don't play a lot of them. The easiest one to get to the grave would be Needle Fiber, but Needle Fiber is not something that you're going to summon right off the get-go. So I think something that can be live in any scenario is more important. Yes, Savage is more powerful, but this card is more consistent. And this card is also good if you're trying to go for damage, because if it destroys a monster by battle, it boosts itself by the attack of the monster destroyed and can attack a second monster. So it's actually really, really strong when you're trying to push for a game. And the last Synchro is 1 Trishula, because with the level 1 tuners, if you get 2 level 4s on the field, which is very easy with the Clowns, the Wolves, the Hat Trickers, then you can go for this, and if you resolve a full effect, then it's pretty devastating for your opponent. I play only 2 XCs, 1 Minerva, of course, because you can get her order to get more monsters in the grave and try to draw more cards if you need to, and 1 Dweller because Dweller is the most generic one that you can play against decks that will lock them out from the game. And it's very easy to go for your Dweller with all those rank 4s, and if you have Mud Dragon on top of it, you can make it a 22 Dweller, so your opponent will not be able to run over it with something like Quacky Mirror Garden, which has become very popular. For the fusions, I play 3 fusions, but again, even if instant fusion is at 1, I still think all 3 of these have the very good purposes to be in here, so I'll explain in thorough once I get to them. So first is Restrict. Restrict is a very good card going second, and the deck doesn't have any good spot removal that you can rely on. If you're trying to play in a full board, then it's going to be very, very difficult, especially if your opponent knows what to negate. So you need extra stuff in order to be able to get rid of negates, in order to have more extenders. So I think Restrict is very, very necessary for this deck. 1 Madragon, especially now that you need more level 4 non-tuners that can become light and Madragon can change its attribute, it's very important to have it on the field. And also, you can start with this if you're afraid that your opponent might have cards like Imperm, like Veiler, and you can make it light and then make all your light monsters untargetable, so you can use cards like Raiden, like Lumina, without the fear of getting targeted by your opponent. So it has 2 purposes that you can combine. And 1 Theseus, which is the least important of the 3, but I still think it's good because there will be this one scenario where you have 3 tuners in your grave and you have 1 Theseus in your 1 instant fusion in your hand, and if you didn't have Theseus, then you won't be able to get that 4th tuner in the grave to use your Dragon of Heaven's effect. So I still think it's really good to have it. And for the links, 1 Needle Fiber, of course, gets your Jet Synchron. I do not run Link Cross in this deck. If you want to play Link Cross, you have to dedicate more slots in your extra deck for cards like Metal Marcher and Herald of the Arclight, as well as play All Lion in the main deck. If you want to go for that, then sure, it's a very good combo if you have more slots in your extra deck. But I think just making a deck that relies on Judgment Dragon and Dragon of Heaven is more fun to play. I don't know if it's the most optimal build, probably it's not, but if you want to have fun with this deck, I recommend this build above everything else. 1 Curious, because it's very easy to summon Lightsworns. This is actually Lightsworn's own Link monster. People have forgotten about that because you see it in so many other decks and rarely in Lightsworns, but this is actually a Lightsworn monster. It was made to be able to be summoned in Lightsworns because they're all lights and all have different attributes, and it has the extra mill effect which helps Lightsworn, so it's really good if your opponent gets rid of it. You can get back any card you want from your grave back to your hand. 1 Appaloosa, because when you're going first, Appaloosa and Dragster are probably the best things you can summon. Maybe Nat Beast if you know what your opponent is playing and you know that they're going to struggle against Naturia Beast. But if you're going blind and you're going first, then you're basically trying to summon Appaloosa and a Dragster turn 1, maybe a Minerva to try to dig for some cards, or Dweller again if you know it's going to be very good for the matchup. And 1 Boral Sword, because you can get a lot of monsters on the field very easily. If you have access code Tokyo, that can work too, but I'm going for the most battered version because I know a lot of you cannot afford access code, so I think Boral Sword is a really good replacement too, because it was the OG monster that could go for an OTKs. So yep, that's the deck, guys. It's a really fun deck. I highly recommend if you're a Lightstorm fan, you try out this new monster. It's going to give you more win conditions, it's going to give the deck a new way to be played, and it's going to make the deck even more fun than before. So yep, if you enjoyed this video, guys, give us a like, it really helps us. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our new videos, and we'll see you next time.